Welcome back to We've Got Issues. I'm Laura Jones. Education is front and center when it comes to Governor Chris Christie. Ryan Hill is the Executive Director for Team Charter Schools. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Now, you're a former teacher who decided to start a charter school. Tell me, what is Team Charter Schools?
Team Charter Schools is part of a national network of charter schools called KIPP, which stands for Knowledge is Power program. In Newark, Team is Newark's version of KIPP, and so we have 4 schools in Newark serving over 1,000 students in grades kindergarten and 5 through 12.
A lot of people don't fully understand what a charter school is. They think that it's a private school, but in fact it is a public school. That
is a common misperception, but charter schools are in fact public schools. We're publicly funded. We get money through the same mechanism that the districts do, but the difference is that we are locally operated, and so we have a board that sort of oversees the school, but then we also have a management team that can make decisions independent of a district structure.
What are some of the benefits to a charter school as opposed to your traditional public school?
Right. Well, one of the benefits is we have the freedom over our budget. We have freedom to determine what the curriculum would be, who to hire, and those are the primary benefits, I think.
So it's not that you have to adhere necessarily to the state guidelines or work with the teachers union, correct?
Well, we don't. Some charter schools are unionized and some aren't. The majority are not. We do have to follow the state standards, but we can add to them as we see fit. So our school is college preparatory. We add standards to make sure that our kids are ready for college and beyond.
So tell me overall, what is working with charter schools? What's not working with charter schools?
Well, the main thing is we believe that parents deserve a choice of schools, and so one of the things that's working really well is that parents get to choose the school. And we think that's a fundamental right of parents, and that, in fact, is working. Another thing that's working is charter schools get to innovate because they're not sort of bound by district regulations, and that's caused sort of the throughout the state and actually throughout the country, you have schools popping up that are kind of figuring out how do you educate kids in these circumstances? How do you do this, how do you educate kids with an arts-based curriculum and that sort of thing? So we've got, charter schools have become a laboratory of innovation that other schools can learn from.
So when you say a laboratory of innovation, is it more back to basics? Are you focusing more on reading, writing, arithmetic, or are you looking at different ways of learning? We talked about in our first segment, more technology, kind of moving forward with the times.
Well, it really depends on the school. So some charter schools have a focus. So some are art schools, some are focused on the environment. In our schools, we're very focused on college preparation, and so fundamental to going to college is being good with technology. So part of what we do is our kids go to school from 7:30 to 5 every day. That extended day plus Saturday school and summer school allows our kids the time and our teachers the time to teach the things that are not sort of considered core right now, but should be, right?
So how did the community react to that? Full day. I'm sure the students probably weren't thrilled about that at first, but full day all year.
I'd say in the very beginning there was skepticism that kids would do that. It's 10 hours of school essentially, plus a couple hours of homework every night. But the actual proves it possible, and our kids, after a few weeks of adjustment for sure, our kids started to prove that they in fact did want to do that work, and they were seeing the benefits of doing that hard work. They had the goal of college in mind because we help them see that. We take them on school visits to Princeton University. We take them, we talk about college all the time, and so our kids realized that the hard work was worth it, and we try to make school as fun as possible. And in terms of the community's reaction, I think there's probably no better way to say it than 10% of the kids in Newark public schools are on waiting lists to come to our school.
So what kind of success rates do you have? I mean, are 50% of your students being accepted to top colleges? Are you, how can you measure that success at this point?
Right. Well, I was telling a friend of mine earlier, yesterday was, excuse me, yesterday was probably the best day of the year for me and possibly my life, because we're starting to get college acceptances, and one of the kids, two kids we had actually who, when they were with us, were homeless on and off and had a lot of tough situations, both got full rides to a top liberal arts college. They're going together. It's going to be awesome. And so, but in terms of the numbers, those two represent the rest of our kids, and 80% of our kids are going off to college in a city where that's not the norm.
That's fantastic. Now, feel free to take a drink of water here. I can talk a little bit. But how, you mentioned that 10% of the public school students are on a waiting list. Who's selected? How do you figure out who can go to a charter school?
Well, it's a lottery, and I should say those 4,000 students, that's just for team schools. Charter schools throughout the city of Newark, there's, I assume, a few thousand more on waiting lists, and throughout the state, we think it's 15 to 20,000 students on waiting lists trying to get into these schools. And in terms of how they're selected, it's a lottery. It's a blind lottery. So we pick names out, and the really unfortunate thing is that in many cases, whether a kid has a 10% chance at college or an 80% chance of college depends on how a lottery ball bounces. And that is not the vision of America that I think most people would have.
So with the governor taking on the teachers union and a commissioner of education, Brett Schindler, who himself had started a charter school, where do you see charter schools team, where is it going? Are you going to be growing at exponential rates?
Right. Well, it's a great question, and actually I would highlight that this is very bipartisan. Charter schools are very bipartisan right now. We have a President Obama, who's extremely pro-charter school. We have a governor and a commissioner here in New Jersey who are both extremely pro-charter school, as you mentioned. And so we think that we've gone from laboratories of innovation to now a place where we're scaling up and we're serving a significant critical mass of kids. So at team schools within the next 10 years, we could double the college-going rate of the city of Newark just with our schools, let alone the rest of the kids in
some people, some critics of charter schools are concerned about the needs of special education students, right. And they say, well, you know, their numbers are going to be better because they don't have to take on the special ed cases. What do you say to that?
Well, we did a study within our school where we took our school and the 5 schools closest. So we have 4 schools in Newark. So the 5 schools closest to each of those, our schools either had like the average number of special ed kids, serve the same number of special ed kids, or even a higher number than the schools around us. So charter schools do serve special needs students, and that's sort of a myth that's been spread about charters that just actually isn't borne out by the numbers. Nationwide, we serve a very similar number of special needs students.
What do you think about just the overall idea of competition, and not just charter schools, but also school vouchers? Is this a good idea?
Well, so my issue is charter schools, public school choice. However, what I'll say is, if I'm a parent, every parent above a certain income level in America has school choice. My parents are very middle class. My dad's a teacher, my mom's a nurse. They chose to move from a city environment in Kentucky to a small town in Wisconsin because the education system was better. They exercise school choice. Parents in Newark oftentimes do not have the means to find another school, to send their kids to private school. So to me, a fundamental right of a fundamental American right is the right to a good education. And if you're not getting that right, you deserve the choice to find it.
I got to ask you, where in Kentucky? Because I was born in Louisville.
Louisville.
Ah, interesting, interesting. You know, when I moved from Louisville to Florida, I was a little bit behind by the time I got to middle school, and when it came to math in particular. So that's interesting, and I never really learned my geography that well. That's not to say that, you know, anything is wrong with the schools there, but that's interesting that you say that. How do parochial Catholic schools fit into school choice?
Well, I mean, one thing that's been very unfortunate in the last few years is the parochial schools in Newark are closing down at a very fast rate. There's just not the money in the city to sustain tuition, and that's unfortunate. So I think in a voucher system or a school choice system that included private schools, you would see those Catholic schools stay open, which I know there's a lot of support for. There are some great Catholic schools that still exist, parochial schools like St. Benedict's in Newark and St. Vincent's, and these are still creating very good opportunities for students. Some of our alumni go off to St. Benedict's, and it's been a phenomenal experience